Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome. This is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks. I was with President Donald Trump and Elon Musk at Mar-a-Lago this past Saturday night. And I have to say the president was in an excellent mood. He and I have had a long-standing understanding that our private conversations remain private, but I will tell you that he was in such an excellent mood. He said, wait till you see what I do to China next week. He also told the great story that in 2014, he very briefly considered running for governor of New York. He was relating this to Elon Musk. And then he pointed to me and said, and this guy called me and said, what the hell are you doing? That job's too small for you. If you want to run for president in 2016, then you can't run for governor in 2014. Even if you won, you'd have to turn right around and begin your campaign for president. He did have a novel idea why he could have won the governorship of New York State in 2014. He said he would have done away with the income tax completely by fracking the Marcellus Shale, the upstate supply of natural gas and oil, which liberal policies have stopped the people from New York from benefiting from. But the president was in an ebullient mood. While China attempts to wait out these American tariffs amid fears of Wall Street, President Trump and his team of economic advisors are employing the classic techniques found in the president's book, The Art of the Deal. Right now, Chairman Xi is somewhere trying to bone up on that book. This past Saturday, with markets closed, President Trump announced a wave of exemptions to the 90-day pause in reciprocal tariffs. This included semiconductor chip parts and other electronics affecting companies like Apple and Nvidia. Many commenters speculated that China had won, but not so fast. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick went on ABC with left-wing journalist John Carroll this morning to say that those exemptions issued over the Jewish Passover holiday would only last for 30 days, when semiconductor and pharmaceutical tariffs would then kick into place. President Trump, predating any involvement from Lutnick, has long said it was a national security threat to have our medicines, particularly antibiotics, made in China, and that they must be made here in America. Well, if Lutnick was sent to reassure the markets, he did just the opposite. Twitter, now known as X, is embroiled with rage at the Commerce Secretary. It seems every media appearance by the former hedge fund manager seems to tank the market. Or was Lutnick really sent out to play bad cop in a good cop versus bad cop scenario? Has Trump pulled the world's media into the greatest apprentice show to date? I think so. Now, we'll have to wait and see, but the president is set to speak tomorrow, I believe it is, with Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, who has turned into a political animal, refusing to lower interest rates under Trump like he did in his last-ditch attempt to help Joe Biden's failing re-election campaign. But are we being distracted by the theatrics of Lutnick, China, and the markets? Last week, Fox News and the New York Post reported that President Trump had tapped Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, the man who went to economic war with both Britain and Japan earlier in his career, and won both of those fights, I might add, to lead the effort of gaining leverage to create a new America First economy. Bessent looks poised to help Main Street by rebalancing the dollar's equities and bonds. Where this goes, only Trump and Bessent knows, but Bessent is a calming influence. He exudes confidence and calm. They made a promise to Main Street, and they received a massive mandate in the last election to do so. I still believe that we are poised on the the beginning of a golden age, an unprecedented age of peace, prosperity, security, and justice for the American people. And I think this gambit by President Donald Trump has three parts. Yes, it is leveling the playing field when it comes to tariffs, but we also have to renew the across-the-board Trump tax cuts by January. Failure to do so, opposing renewal of these across-the-board tax cuts, would put a politician in the position of favoring the largest single tax increase in American history. And then, of course, we have to take some of these enormous spending scandals uncovered by Elon Musk and his Doge in order to actually cut federal spending. In the meantime, in the Sunshine State, a simmering scandal erupted last Friday when the Tampa Bay Times, the Miami Herald, and Politico Florida revealed that the administration of Governor Ron DeSantis orchestrated a $10 million payment last year to a nonprofit founded by the governor's wife. Now, she is a putative candidate to follow him as governor. Last time that happened was when Lurleen Wallace followed George Wallace, who was term limited by the Alabama state constitution. The governor's been pretty clear that he intends to try to put his wife in the governor's mansion to try to continue to have the leverage point to raise money for a future campaign for president. He did so poorly in the last one. I'm not sure what he's thinking, but in a nutshell, the DeSantis administration pressured a major state contractor to make a $10 million donation to the Hope Florida Foundation, a controversial charity spearheaded by the First Lady. It was part of a settlement negotiated with Centene Corporation after the state's largest Medicaid contractor overbilled the state by $67 million. This all comes from a great report by journalist Jason Garcia. Days later, Hope Florida transferred the $10 million to a pair of dark money nonprofits controlled by, well, Ron and Casey DeSantis. The state-backed charity gave $5 million each to Save Our Society from Drugs, an anti-marijuana group, and Secure Florida's Future, a political vehicle controlled by executives at the Florida Chamber of Commerce, the big business lobbying group. And days after that, Save Our Society from Drugs and Security Florida then moved that money over to Keep Florida Clean, a political committee chaired by Ron DeSantis' then chief of staff, who actually today has been appointed as his attorney general, that was created to oppose Amendment 3, the amendment in last year's ballot that would have allowed Floridians to use marijuana recreationally rather than solely for medicinal purposes. So, in other words, they essentially took money that was made to help, was meant to help people pay for health insurance for the poor, the elderly, and disabled Americans, and they used it for political ads. Joining us on the show today, Troy Smith, the editor and founder of Slingshot.News, going to break down the events in Florida. This is, I think, endangering the gubernatorial aspirations of Casey DeSantis and her husband's bid for a future presidential campaign, and will bolster the chances of Congressman Byron Donalds. I was with him last night in Collier County for their Lincoln, Reagan, Trump dinner, and I think he is the man to beat. So we've got a lot of politics today. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the latest on Letitia James and her serial mortgage fraud. And we're going to drill down on what the Chinese are thinking and what they may do in response to the tough tactics by Donald J. Trump. It's all right here on the Roger Stone Show. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial. We'll be back with Troy Smith, the editor-in-chief of Slingshot.News, to break down the news from the Sunshine State. Don't go away.
Smartwater Alkaline with antioxidant. 9.5 plus pH, now in cans.
Refreshing.
Made for every way you move.
Should I run a marathon?
Let's start with finishing that water. Smartwater Alkaline with antioxidant, now in a sleek can. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
And we're back. You know, when I advertised this show on X, because I do that every Sunday, I got a lot of pushback. I'm like, what's your beef with Ron DeSantis? Well, if you're not a Floridian, you may not know the facts. In 2018, Ron DeSantis was an undistinguished congressman with a cheap suit and a bad haircut. He decided to run for governor. He's running about 8% in the polls. Opposing him was State Agriculture Commissioner Adam Putnam. He was at about 53%. All 62 Republican county chairs in the state of Florida endorsed Adam Putnam. Every Republican state senator, every Republican state representative in the two houses of the Florida legislature, where the Republicans have a majority, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, every member, Republican member of the congressional delegation, save Matt Gaetz, had all endorsed Putnam, who looked like he was sailing to an easy victory in the Republican primary. But Donald Trump, who really didn't know that Ron DeSantis had refused to endorse him in the 2016 election when they were on the ticket together, was taken by Ron DeSantis' vigorous defense of Donald Trump on Fox in the Russian collusion hoax, and he endorsed him in a epic and historic posting on Truth Social, and even Adam Putnam said it was like a neutron bomb. DeSantis' candidacy took off like a rocket. He easily won the Republican nomination, but because he is not a very charismatic candidate, and because he had limited knowledge of state issues, having planned to run for the U.S. Senate, President Donald Trump had to change his schedule 3 times to return to Florida in the closing 2 weeks of the 2018 campaign to drag the charisma challenge Ron DeSantis over the finish line by 25,000 votes out of 8,119,909 votes counted. And from my point of view, Governor DeSantis and his decision to challenge the man who made him governor is the ultimate act of ingratitude. Those are the actions of a backstabber. He's at that time, I think, 42 years old, and not even finished with his first term as governor. He could not wait to run for president. Now, I think loyalty matters. And now, as I said not long ago, since he cannot run again in 2026, he's promoting the potential candidacy of his wife. What her qualifications to be governor are, she was a newscaster, but her qualifications to be governor, I think, are quite questionable. It was interesting when President Trump endorsed Congressman Byron Donalds of Naples for the Naples area for governor. DeSantis viciously attacked Donalds, saying that he missed too many votes in Congress when he was out campaigning for the re-election of Donald Trump in 2024, which is comical because when he was running for governor of Florida in 2018, Ron DeSantis missed more congressional votes than anybody. So hypocrisy abounds in this entire situation. And now we have learned that $10 million was diverted from a settlement with Centene, Florida's biggest Medicaid contractor, funneled through Ron's health care administration. This was hidden from the Republicans in the legislature, breaking trust with Floridians who expect straight dealings. The money then was sent to the Hope Foundation, controlled by Casey DeSantis, dodging legally required audits, financial plans, and ethic codes. When state lawmakers asked for records, Casey DeSantis and her husband's team have been stonewalling them. Florida law says that settlement funds should go to a state trust or a general fund for lawmakers to allocate. Instead, the DeSantis team diverted this money to Casey DeSantis' slush fund. The Hope Foundation hasn't filed any required audits, tax returns, or ethics disclosures as required by law. This is clearly a platform for the governor to try to make his wife governor to follow him. It's a rigged setup to keep the DeSantis dynasty in power, but it does not, in my opinion, serve Floridians. While Casey is tied to Ron's failed presidential run, Byron Donalds got President Trump's full backing. He's an outsider. It's not a family enterprise. Now, since DeSantis became governor, homeowner insurance premiums have tripled in the state of Florida. People keep saying to my ex, he's the best governor in the Florida. Really. His reforms handed insurance companies $2 billion in taxpayer-funded bailouts while letting them dodge lawsuits. Also, he greenlit utility rate hikes with Florida Power and Light jacking up bills by 20% since 2020. That's the largest single increase in utility costs in Florida history, but that's because the Public Service Commission is stacked with DeSantis loyalists who rubber-stamped those increases after Ron took $9.5 million from Florida Power and Light and their subsidiaries. Meanwhile, medium home prices have jumped 65% under Governor DeSantis, from $254,000 average in 2018 to $420,000 on average in 2024. He's in action on affordability, and his cozy ties with developers prioritize profits over people, pricing out retirees and young Floridians. DeSantis also fast-tracked sprawl, gutting environmental protections to let developers bulldoze wetlands and forests. This fuels flooding risks and strains the infrastructure. All the while, he's taking campaign cash from the same builders wrecking Florida's beauties. You know, it's not very often that I agree with the Florida State Democrat chairwoman, Nikki Fried, someone who I have respect for, although I disagree with on virtually everything. But when she said all of this has to be investigated, including the role of our new Attorney General, I think she hit it right on the head, and I said so on X. You see, I may be a Republican, but I'm an equal opportunity critic. I criticize Republicans and Democrats. It's called the stone cold truth. Ron DeSantis bragged about Florida's freedom from COVID, but then he quietly signed laws shielding Big Pharma from vaccination lawsuits. So, we'll have Troy Smith coming up right along. He's at slingshot.news. He's going to help us break this all down. Whatever you do, folks, don't touch that dial.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
And we're back. It's the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. I don't hide my disdain for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis because, well, I believe in loyalty. I've often heard people say, well, all he had to do was wait and he would have been president. I actually don't think that's true. I think that he does not have the qualities it takes, not just the leadership qualities, but he is, shall we say, charisma challenged. In fact, I think he has some kind of severe personality disorder. He never looks anyone in the eye. He often wears earbuds when he's not listening to anything. That way he can avoid human contact. One of his state police bodyguards used to tell me that he would do anything to avoid friendly crowds going into the back door of public events and refusing to shake hands with anybody on his way out. And his wife is equally charmless. She comes across as an overly ambitious, self-absorbed shrew. Joining me now on the Roger Stone Show is Troy Smith. He is the founder and editor of Slingshot News, which has taken off like a rocket. Andy is now the host of Slingshot TV, which you can see on X as well as other platforms. Troy, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, it's an honor, as always, to join you here on WABC, and I just wanted to make this clear. You know, we're here today to expose something that's very troubling, especially for the people of Florida, who it appears, based on this latest expose that you can find at Slingshot News that we were collaborating with you on, that you've also cross-posted to your platforms, this scandal is really screwed the people of Florida out of over $10 million here, Roger. We're going to break it down, but just unbelievable. It's a terrible situation, and we needed a full investigation into this right away.
Yeah, an excellent post on this on Substack by a journalist named Jason Garcia. His Substack is called The Seeking Rents. Excellent piece. I don't know this if this reporter even has politics, but when it comes to just straight facts, a superb piece. And some seminal reporting. I first saw it in the Miami Herald, but the bottom line of this is quite simple. Ron DeSantis and his wife, with the knowledge of his chief of staff and involvement of his chief of staff, who he has appointed now to a vacancy in the Attorney General's office, State Attorney General, after he appointed the State General to the U.S. Senate seat that was vacated by Marco Rubio upon his appointment to become Secretary of State, diverted $10 million from the state's Medicaid program to a nonprofit political slush fund. They then took that money and funneled it into the campaign against legalized marijuana in Florida. This is really not about where you stand on that question as so much as the fact that there's been no disclosure here. They're stonewalling the Republicans in the state legislature. They have failed to report the necessary disclosures, as I understand it, required by law. Give us the quick breakdown here.
Well, Roger, it's very simple. This is a shocking corruption scandal we're going to get into right now. Casey DeSantis's Hope Florida is a 501c3 charity. And that charity, Roger, recently received a $10 million payout as part of a settlement with the state's largest Medicaid provider at the behest of Florida's Agency for Healthcare Administration, a clear conflict of interest, and that was at the direction of Governor Ron DeSantis. The money was moved into Hope Florida from the AHCA as part of a $67 million settlement between the AHCA and Medicaid provider Centene regarding alleged overpayments made to pharmacy benefit managers. Now, $57 million of the settlement, Roger, went back to the taxpayers. $10 million was just inexplicably taken out and given right to Casey DeSantis' nonprofit. And this was compelled by Ron DeSantis' administration. Now, what we found afterwards, Roger, is exactly as you described. This money was then taken in two separate $5 million payments and pushed to Florida Chambers' Secure Florida's Future and another organization called Save Our Society from Drugs that both pushed the political will of Ron DeSantis in the last election here in Florida. So there's a pretty direct tie. Ron DeSantis' administration orchestrates a $10 million payment to Casey DeSantis' charity, who then disperses the money to groups that are advancing Ron DeSantis' political interests. Roger, if that's not corruption, I don't know what is.
No, it's a daisy chain that may have transformed $10 million in public money, that is money meant to pay for health insurance for the poor, the elderly, and disabled Floridians, into funding of the political aspirations of Ron and Casey DeSantis. The governor, of course, insists that he's done nothing wrong, but lashing out in increasingly vitriolic attacks on everyone from the Republican Speaker of the House to newspaper reporters accurately reporting this story. But at least one prominent Republican, Representative Alex Andrade, a Pensacola Republican who's been presiding over hearings looking at all of this, told the Times and Herald newspaper the transaction looks like a criminal fraud by some of those involved. This appears to me also, having talked to a couple of lawyers who know far more than I do, to be potentially a federal crime. This is a part of a larger pattern of potential abuses that Ron DeSantis has committed since last fall. You recall in his gubernatorial campaign, he raised almost $100 million more than he required to run for re-election. Then he took that roughly $100 million, which was in a state PAC, and transferred it into a federal PAC. In fact, he didn't really transfer it. He just changed the nature of the vehicle. I believe that's a violation of state and federal law. The Trump campaign filed a complaint, but because the Federal Election Commission is tied 3-3, they don't make a decision about anything. It is amazing that this entire scheme by the DeSantises could undo not only her campaign for Congress, but I think that there very, very well may be a federal criminal investigation into the governor, the first lady, and the guy who is the attorney general of the state, who was in on this money transfer. Troy?
Well, Roger, there's a lot here to unpack. I spoke to several investigators this morning who are taking a look into this. And, you know, these organizations that are 501c3, Roger, there are specific guidelines as to how you establish these organizations. There are very specific regulations as far as what is public and what is not. And it's not just the legislators should be able to look into Hope Florida. It should be that anybody that is a concerned citizen should be able to look into it, because that is why Hope Florida has been given this charitable, public, tax-free designation. It's been given this top-tier, sought-after provision because it has proclaimed to benefit the public. And what we have uncovered in this investigation is not only has the organization not worked to benefit the public, but has received chunks of money from the very government that the woman who started its husband runs. And, Roger, we can't state enough here that the fact that they refuse to disclose certain things, they haven't filed the correct paperwork as far as upstanding organizations are supposed to do. Any other organization, let's say Roger Stone or Troy Smith created an organization that had this many problems, we would be under investigation. We would be subject to fines, penalties, and maybe even imprisonment. So I guess the question we have to ask, Roger, is if it could happen to you or it could happen to me, why isn't it happening to Ron and Casey DeSantis?
Yeah, I would note that the House Speaker of Florida, Republican Daniel Perez of Miami-Dade, said on Wednesday, so far it looks as although it all could be illegal. When we come back, I'm going to ask Troy Smith about another politician who seems to be in deep kimchi. That is New York Attorney General Letitia James. Shocking revelations about her serial mortgage fraud brought forward by Sam Antar at his whitecollarfraud.com and also by Joel Gilbert over at the Gateway Pundit. So if you want to hear the latest on that, don't go away.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Roger Stone.
In these turbulent financial times, with the Federal Reserve insisting that they answer to no one and printing money like it's going out of style, with our national debt in the trillions and completely unsustainable, and with hundreds of lawsuits trying to stop Elon Musk and his Doge from ferreting out not millions, not billions, but trillions of waste, fraud, and corruption in public spending, now is the time to protect your future, your retirement, and do so by fortifying your retirement with the strength of gold. You can acquire precious metals like gold. You can convert a portion or all of your IRA, your 401k, or your cash savings, and you can do so tax-free. The people I trust to do this are the folks at the Colonial Metals Group. You can reach them at colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone or go to freegoldguide.com. Now is the time to fortify your future with the strength of gold. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Troy Smith. He is the founder and editor of Slingshot.news. He also has a popular new online show. Troy, tell folks where they can see your work.
Roger, thank you very much. The website is slingshot.news. Just put that into your browser. Or if you want to see the show, Slingshot TV, we air every single weeknight at 7 to 8 p.m., and you can check that out at News Slingshot. So just put into X at News Slingshot. And we've also recently opened a Substack, Roger. You search for Slingshot News on Substack. You'll also find our work in specifically the piece about DeSantis.
So I want to ask you about this shocking report. Sam Antar, a financial analyst with a colorful past, but a true expert, once himself convicted in one of the largest financial frauds in American history, served his time, served his debt to society, rededicated himself to ferreting out the truth about some of our politicians and major corporations. He has determined that New York's Attorney General Letitia James, who built her career on exposing deception, in fact, may be quite guilty of a little deception herself. It has to do with a real estate transaction in Norfolk, Virginia, carried out, strangely enough, just weeks before she charged, or I should say tried, Donald Trump for valuation fraud, but it raises serious questions about her own compliance with New York law. You see, a declaration buried in legal filings state the Attorney General's intent to make Virginia, a house she was buying through this mortgage, her principal residence. She wrote, "I hereby declare that I intend to occupy this property as my principal residence." Those words appear in black and white in a specific power of attorney signed by Letitia James and filed in Norfolk, Virginia on August 17, 2023, authorizing her relative, Shamise Thompson Hairston, to act on her behalf in a transaction that included a declaration. They were not written by a lawyer on her behalf. They're not part of some boilerplate language in the mortgage. Those are her words, her intent, her signature, Antar reports. This signed power of attorney is a smoking gun of its own, completely separate about how the mortgage might be interpreted. It is a clear declaration of intent from the sitting New York Attorney General to establish principal residency in a different state. Now, under New York state law, were a statewide elected official to move out of state, the office they hold would automatically be vacated. So one of two things are true. Either she has moved out of state, as she said she would do within 60 days of signing this document, or, if that is not the case, then she has engaged in mortgage fraud. As you know, Troy, this is not the first misstep by the Attorney General, who insists that no person is above the law. By the way, that includes her. But this is one of a long series of acts that appear to me to be mortgage fraud. Troy, your thoughts?
Well, Roger, this is embroiling Letitia James, and people just have to be aware. This is a woman who spent her entire career trying to get Trump, and in search of that, she actually has committed a lot of infractions herself. And we're looking at this along with the fact, Roger, I'm not sure that you know this, but this is actually a problem with Adam Schiff as well. Adam Schiff, the senator, owns a 3,400 square foot home in Potomac, Maryland, that he has listed as his primary residence for year after year after year on his taxes. And this would, based on the rules of the Senate, based on the rules of the U.S. Constitution, disqualify him from being a member of the U.S. Senate, because when he was elected, he listed his primary residence in Maryland. And this is another example. I think there's so many conservatives, Roger, that look at Letitia James, the fact that she is not, by her own admission, a resident of the state, which binds her. By the way, we have in the New York Constitution, it's very clear that Letitia James has to be a member of or a resident of the state of New York, and that is Article 4, Section 2. And that it goes into Executive Law Section 60 to clarify eligibility, Roger, and that states that Letitia James has to be a resident, declared resident of the state of New York in order to serve as Attorney General. And we've revealed here on the show, and Sam Antar as well, that that is not the case. So we have people like Adam Schiff, people like Letitia James red-handed, Roger, but there never seems to be accountability. There never seems to be actions on this. I think it's something that people are looking to the Trump administration now and Pam Bondi and the Justice Department and Kash Patel, and they want to see action on these things. I am sitting with everybody else waiting for the hammer to drop because we have the evidence. We've revealed it here. It's just a matter of enforcing the law.
No, I think you're absolutely right. This is part of a larger pattern. In the first mortgage that Letitia was able to get, when she was but 24 years old, she appears to have relied on the balance sheet and the financials of her father. Now, she told the mortgage company that her father was her husband, and the mortgage says that they are man and wife, but the title for the property correctly says they are father and daughter. That is, of course, fraud. On another case, she applied for and got a federal HAMP loan. This is a loan that is available for investment properties, but those properties have to have at least 5 units. It was Joel Gilbert at Gateway Pundit who determined that the property in question, also in Virginia, only had 4 units. Yet another incidence of mortgage fraud. So I guess the question is, do we have one standard of law or 2? She's the one who says that no person is above the law. And it appears to me that these are federal crimes, and they ought to be investigated. We shall see. What's a little disappointing is that the New York Times, the New York Post, the Daily News, all of these great media outlets have been supplied with this information, but none of them have reported. Let me thank our guest, Troy Smith at Slingshot.News, for joining us. Remind you, folks, that you're listening to The Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and whatever you do, don't touch that dial because we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Buick. Buick certified service technicians are factory trained to fit your vehicle with the tires specifically developed for it. And with our tire price match guarantee, you get the best fit for the best deal. Buick, exceptional by design. Available on select eligible tire brands at participating dealers only. Offer ends 12/31/2025. Terms apply. See dealer for complete details. Visit Buick.com/service to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code Spotify. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify. Code Spotify.
Welcome back. President Donald Trump posting just minutes ago on his various social media platforms. The president said, and I quote, "Nobody is getting off the hook for the unfair trade balances and non-monetary tariff barriers that other countries have used against us, especially not China, which by far treats us the worst." Here to discuss this with us is a veteran journalist, Gordon Chang. Gordon has lived and worked in Shanghai and Hong Kong for almost 2 decades. He's a columnist at Newsweek, a regular contributor at The Hill. He also writes for Newsmax. His writings have appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the National Review, Barron's, and elsewhere. He is the author of several books. I loved his first book, China's Going to War, The Great U.S.-China Tech War. But his most recent book, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, also available on Amazon. I must say, Gordon, last time you were on the show was one of the most popular shows we've ever had. We're honored to have you back. Welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Well, I'm honored to be talking to you, Roger, so thank you.
So let me read a little bit more of the president's post here. He goes on to say there's no tariff exception announced on Friday. These projects are subject to existing 20% fentanyl tariffs, and they are just moving to a different tariff bucket. The fake news knows this but refuses to report it. We are taking a look at semiconductors and the whole electronics supply chain in the upcoming national security tariff investigations. What has been exposed, the president says, is that we need to make products in the United States, and we will not be held hostage by other countries, especially hostile trading nations like China, which will do everything within its power to respect and destroy the American people. We will not and cannot let this continued abuse on trade that has been going on for decades continue, because those days are over. Gordon, your thoughts on the fact that China has now increased their tariffs in response to President Trump's tariffs, and their stock market took a major plunge. What will the Chinese do? Will they back down and remove their tariffs? Will they make a deal with the greatest deal maker in American business and political history?
I wish I knew, Roger, but I would guess that the Chinese are going to hold out for a very, very long time. And the reason is that Xi Jinping has configured the Chinese political system so that only the most hostile answers are considered to be acceptable. So it's very difficult for China to pick up the phone and call President Trump, which is the economically rational thing for China to do. Because you've got to remember that they're the smaller economy. The Chinese economy is less than two-thirds the size of ours, and China is the trade surplus country. Last year, their merchandise trade surplus against us was $295.4 billion. That was up 5.8% from 2023. Trade surplus countries don't have any ammunition in trade wars. So the objective factors show basically that the Chinese can't win. But Xi Jinping can win on a non-objective factor, and that is if he is able to convince the American public, businesses, Wall Street, farmers, you name it, if they can convince Trump to back down. Now, I don't think Trump is in any mood to back down, so we should win this fight. But the Chinese are going to fight like tooth and nail, and they're going to get their allies in the U.S. to help them.
Yeah, if they think that Donald Trump is going to back down, they don't know him. He is the immovable object. Right now, I think Chairman Xi is someplace huddled with a copy of The Art of the Deal, trying to figure out what he's up against. You have said, and I think you're right, that China has run out of ammo. There are no bullets in their six-shooter, and the president knows it, and therefore their negotiating position is weak. But as you know, in their culture, saving face is vitally important. The president's tariffs are designed in part to reinvigorate manufacturing in America. How do you see American manufacturing developing over the next 4 years based on these policies?
Couple things. First of all, Trump has been extraordinarily successful in getting foreign companies to announce investment into the U.S. The most important one was TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which announced $100 billion on top of the $65 billion already invested here. That additional $100 billion is for 5 more fabs in North Phoenix. The question is, do we have the workers for such new facilities? So we're going to need, I think, basically something like President Eisenhower's National Defense Education Act of 1958. We're going to have to train up American workers. That's important. On the other hand, I think that because of the reduction in tax rates and some other things that Trump has been working on, that's going to encourage U.S. companies to manufacture here. And it's going to encourage a lot of people to start businesses and to make things in our country. So I see a relatively bright future for us. We've got to worry about what the Chinese are going to do, but nonetheless, we're Americans. This is our country. We're going to do it.
It is amazing to me that somehow, under both Republican and Democrat presidents, we have allowed ourselves to become reliant on our most important pharmaceuticals, particularly antibiotics, but also many other important drugs, which are now almost virtually completely produced in China. Who, Republican or Democrat, could have possibly thought that that was either a good idea or not a national security question?
Yeah, and we have to remember, even today, there are Republicans and Democrats who are working against our interests. The Democrats, of course, because they just abhor Trump, and some of them actually hate him. So they are against everything that he's trying to do to protect us. And then you got some conservative free market Republicans who don't care about our national security, who think that we're at peace. Well, the Chinese don't think they're at peace because you can hear it from their rhetoric and you can see what they're doing. So we've got problems on both sides of the aisle, Roger. And what we have to do right now is to make pharmaceuticals in America. President Trump, at the end of his first term, tried to do that with a $750 million loan to Eastman Kodak to make active pharmaceutical ingredients. The plan was flawed. It didn't work, and Trump didn't get reelected. Now, if Trump had gotten reelected in 2020, then very well he could have continued that initiative. And I hope that he starts it again, because we need to make our pharmaceuticals on American soil.
It is also interesting to me that one of the great blunders of the Biden foreign policy was driving the Chinese and the Russians, who are not natural allies, who have a long, long common border and centuries of distrust between the two nations. People assume they're both communists or they're both authoritarians, so therefore they're natural allies. That, of course, is not the case. President Richard Nixon understood this. This was the great success that he had. We only got a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Russians because Richard Nixon recognized that opening the door to China, which was then a backwards, dirt-poor agrarian society with very little technology, very little indoor plumbing, rural areas had no electricity. This was 30 years before Bill Clinton gave them most favored trading status, which is what made them an economic superpower, and he sold them our military secrets in the Loral scandal, our missile targeting technology, in return for illegal campaign contributions. Donald Trump's foreign policy clearly designed to drive the Russians and the Chinese, neither of whom are our friends, let's be clear, but to drive them apart. And I think he will be successful. When we come back, we'll talk more to Gordon Chang about what the future holds when it comes to U.S.-Chinese relations. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never-frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences, like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off, plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50. Code listen50. Terms and conditions apply.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for a Light and Fit remix. Like a crunchy storm of graham cookies, caramel pearls, and dark chocolate, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Light and Fit remix varieties with craveable flavors and up to 120 calories and 10 grams of protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
And we're back in the Roger Stone Show. All right, I just wanted to let you know that before the end of the show, as promised, I'm going to reveal my family recipe for veal parmesan, as I have promised. So get out your pen and paper. At the end of the show, we're going to have that recipe. But in the meantime, we are back with Gordon Chang, veteran journalist. Gordon's latest book, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon has a very, very lively page on X, formerly known as Twitter. Gordon, where can people follow you on X?
At GordonGchang, Gordon G. Chang.
Folks, don't miss it. He's got a very lively commentary there. We are talking about this epic struggle with the communist Chinese. I had a lot of people panicked last week. Oh, look at the stock market. Oh, here's what I know. I went to the grocery store 2 days ago to get a dozen eggs. Last time I did that, Joe Biden was president. They were $8.90 a dozen. I paid $5.40. Fuel prices are down. Interest rates are down. I think America's on its way back. I think the president's tariff, I don't want to call it strategy, is working. The Chinese may not fold as easily as the Mexicans have already folded, as well as many others. I think the Canadians are on their way to folding. This has a lot to do with the Chinese mindset. Now, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said after a call with the Chinese Premier Li Qiang that the EU and China should work together to reach a, quote, negotiated resolution, close quote, for the global economy in the face of this U.S. tariff threat by Trump. To what extent are the EU and the Chinese now working together, Gordon, against America and President Trump?
Well, the EU is also talking to the United States, and they're in active discussions right now. You know, the EU Commission, they can talk about all sorts of hoped-for discussions with Beijing, but they've been talking to Beijing for decades, and things have only gotten worse between Europe and China. I don't think we're going to see a big deal between Brussels and Beijing. It's just not in the cards, Roger. If they come up with some arrangement, it's probably going to fall apart fast. I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think that President Trump will stitch up a deal with Brussels a lot sooner than Beijing will.
It's interesting. I keep seeing the president's critics keep saying that these tariffs are inflationary, yet there's deflation in China, and they are one of the most aggressive advocates for tariffs. What is the current state of the Chinese economy in reality?
Yeah, you talk about deflation. We saw the price numbers for March. Both consumer prices and producer prices were down. Consumer prices down for 2 straight months. Producer prices down for 30 straight months. I don't think China is growing at the 5.0% pace that they reported for last year. I think that it's about zero. And if it's not contracting now, it will soon be, because all the signals, or most of the signals, point to a really bad future for China. This comes at a really important time because not only is the Chinese economy crumbling, you got the property market in collapse, China's facing a debt crisis, and here then comes President Trump with his tariffs. It's hitting China all at the same time.
Yeah, it is very interesting. You know, President Richard Nixon had something called the madman theory, where he would have Henry Kissinger go meet the North Vietnamese and say, look, I'm a reasonable guy, but Nixon, you know, this guy could push the button. He could annihilate you. It was the unpredictability, and, of course, they used it to end the Vietnam War. I think this works very well with the Chinese in relation to Taiwan. Little doubt in my mind that the Chinese leaders understood that if they took Taiwan, under Joe Biden, what they would have gotten was a strong letter of condemnation from the Biden State Department, but little else. Yet they look at Donald Trump and they see that he's completely and totally unpredictable. I don't think they dare make this move, but I'm more interested in what you think.
Yeah, I agree with you for 2 reasons. First of all, I don't think that the Chinese military is ready to invade Taiwan. Although they've got really good weapons, and some of them are better than ours, the Chinese military leaders are now purging each other, and it's complete turmoil at the top of the People's Liberation Army. And I don't think Xi Jinping trusts his military. That's not to say that China won't end up in a war with Taiwan, but I don't think they're going to launch hostilities with an invasion of the main island. What could happen is Xi Jinping is involved in a lot of provocations, not only against Taiwan, but also South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Australia. This is the last 2 weeks, Roger. They're lashing out, and I think something could go horribly wrong. And one of those incidents could spiral out of control. Xi Jinping is in no mood to have a reasonable response to the international community. This is where things can go really bad. I do believe that Xi Jinping is afraid of Donald Trump. I don't think he wants to take on the United States. But Xi Jinping right now is in a very difficult position. And so we have to be prepared for anything.
I could not agree more. One of the largest problems I see is the acquisition of prime ranch land, farmland, and other strategic property, real estate, right here in the United States. So Governor Ron DeSantis announced that he was going to bar the Chinese from purchasing land in Florida. But then when you look at the fine points of his law, he only barred them from buying land if it was contiguous to a, quote, national security facility, whatever that means. That's an ill-defined term. With about a minute and a half, little less to go, how big a problem is this? And then tell us yet again where folks can find you on X.
Yeah, we just need to stop Chinese purchases altogether. We need to take land away from the Chinese. Issue of reciprocity, if nothing else. We can't buy a square inch in China. The Chinese shouldn't be able to buy a square inch here. And besides, they're using it for espionage, human trafficking operations, illegal marijuana grows. I think they're trying to implant invasive species here. Enough is enough, Roger. Anyway, they can find me on X at Gordon G. Chang. I tweet about this stuff all the time because it's really getting serious, Roger.
All right, Gordon Chang, the great Gordon Chang. Thanks for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Well, thank you, Roger. I really appreciate it.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
I am so excited for the spa day. Candles lit, music on, hot tub warm and ready. And then my chronic hives come back. Again, in the middle of my spa day. What a wet blanket. Looks like another spell of itchy red skin. If you have chronic spontaneous urticaria or CSU, there is a different treatment option. Hives during my next spa day? Not if I can help it. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Our listeners know my ethnic heritage. I am half Hungarian and half Italian. I like to say I'm Italian from the waist down. Before the end of the show, we're going to have my family recipe for the greatest veal parmigiana you've ever had. But before that, I want to welcome our next guest. He is the founder of MyPatriotCigars.com, which has been and is a loyal advertiser here on the Roger Stone Show. We call him the right-wing cigar czar. Welcome to the show, Alan Jacoby.
Roger, always a pleasure. Thank you.
I am delighted to have you with us because you're a man who always says what's on his mind. We were talking about Steve Bannon and his appearance on the show of that reprobate. Let's play this little bite if we could. Bill Maher and Steve Bannon.
Here it is, the Constitution. Can I read a passage to you? Amendment 22. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. And yet you keep talking about Trump's... Maybe you should have this. Here, I'll
get you to sign it backstage and underline.
I will.
President Trump didn't bring up running for a third term. Myself and others brought up running for a third term. President Trump is going to run for a third term, and President Trump is going to be elected again on the afternoon of January 20th of 2029. He's going to be president of the United States.
Okay, but the thing I just read in there, it seemed like there was no wriggle room there. It seemed like it was just, 8 or 10 words that said only 2 times.
We have a team of people that are
working. A team. How can a team do something about that? What? I don't care if the team is 12 trillion people. The words are still the words.
Bill, every day in federal courts, right now in federal courts, there's 120 lawsuits on what President Trump's doing for his Article 2 rights on the unified executive theory. But he's chief executive, he's commander-in-chief, and he's chief magistrate and chief law enforcement officer. There's 100, and they're running to court every day to sue President Trump, all because the interpretation of this. The interpretation of this is open for interpretation.
How could it be open? Could I have it back? I'm sorry.
This is an absurd commentary. Now, I don't know who wrote Bill Maher's routine. I've been on his show. I actually did the initial pilot for Politically Incorrect. I've been on his show multiple times. I can tell you without a platoon of comedy writers, the man is adult. He's vaguely amusing. He's actually quite annoying. But in this particular case, he's right. I mean, the U.S. Constitution is absolutely clear. No person can be elected for more than 2 years. And unfortunately, that includes even our great current president. In fact, the Constitution goes so far as to say that if a person ends up filling the term of another president, as, say, Lyndon Johnson filled the term of John F. Kennedy, if they did so for more than 2 years, they could only run for one more term. Johnson did so for less, and therefore he was able to run in 64 and would have been eligible to run in 68, but he dropped out. So what is Steve talking about here? Now, there is a theory that the party could nominate J.D. Vance for president and Donald Trump for vice president, and then Vance could resign and Trump could rise to the presidency. If J.D. Vance were elected president, why would he want to resign? I mean, look, I love the idea in concept, but I think Steve Bannon is trolling us, and it's disappointing. Alan, what do you think?
Well, Roger, you did say I like to say what's on my mind. I believe Bill Maher called you the white assassin. Didn't he call you that?
Albino assassin, yeah.
Albino assassin, that's right. I remember that. So Steve Bannon, listen, I refer to him as Sloppy Steve, MAGA's favorite government witness, okay? There are factions of MAGA that fawn all over him because he has them fooled. Steve Bannon is the ultimate con man. He is the ultimate grifter. I despise him more so because of what he's done to the movement and what he's done to you. I mean, he turns government witness on the great Roger Stone and testified against you on behalf of the government, all based on lies. So that one right there should be a red flag for everybody. The Bill Maher podcast show, whatever it was with Bannon, was I had to do everything I could to not throw up all over myself. Steve Bannon with this third term with Donald Trump. Listen, I'm for it. I'm all for it, but it's not reality. And the problem with Steve Bannon is he drives MAGA into this place that's not based in reality. They refer to him, and not all of them. Listen, I'm MAGA, but there are people that consider him this architect of MAGA, the godfather of MAGA, and that's all horse crap. Steve Bannon is a con man. He's a rat. He's a Jeffrey Epstein sympathizer. I mean, the man was a consultant for him for a 60 Minutes interview back in 2016, visiting him in his Manhattan mansion and in Paris, the Manhattan mansion where all of this debauchery with young underage girls happened. All right. So when I hear Steve Bannon, I hear Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, it's all there, and he's there. I think that this gets me really hyped up, Roger. So I got to slow down a minute. Steve Bannon, they started that show, War Room Pandemic, based off chaos, COVID, right? That's what the War Room Steve Bannon label is about. Complete and utter chaos, blackpilling, and things like Donald Trump running for a third term, this base of almost like taking over everything. You know what that does, in my opinion, and I'm not a political strategist like you, it hurts the Republican Party. We have very important midterms approaching very quickly. And if we do not retain the House of Representatives, Donald Trump's presidency is over. He's a lame duck. And then they get to spend the next 2 years in impeachment hearings, okay, and nothing gets done. The American industrial renaissance stops. American greatness stops. Everything stops. And I think Bannon and people like his minions want that to happen because their business model is making money on the black pill chaos of government. Because if all the good guys keep winning and all the good guys are in charge, Steve Bannon and his cronies aren't making any money. So, again, Bill Maher, clown, comedian, Steve Bannon, the ultimate con man. And I'm sorry, but the Build the Wall thing that he raised money for, Roger, he pleaded not guilty, but so did two others involved in that. And they received 4 and 3 years in prison and having to make restitution of millions and millions of dollars. And one guy was convicted, this guy Timothy Shea. He spent 5+ years in prison because he kept $180,000. Why wasn't Steve Bannon put in jail for that? He, after pleading guilty, but the other 3 had prison sentences. What else is he cooperating on or lying to cooperate on to save his own behind? You know, I could go on and on.
You know, the incident you refer to is Steve Bannon testified on January 16, 2018, in front of the same House Intelligence Committee that I did. He was asked point blank by Adam Schiff, did you ever discuss WikiLeaks, Russians, collusion, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, or these allegedly stolen emails with Roger Stone? He said, no, never. And Adam Schiff said, on no occasion. He said, no, on no occasion. Then, to my surprise, Robert Mueller's surprise witness at my trial, who swept into the courtroom dressed all in black, I looked like a fat Johnny Cash, would look me in the eye, asked the exact same question. Did you ever talk to Roger Stone about WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, or these allegedly stolen emails? Bannon said, oh, yes. Stone brought them up in every conversation we had in 2016. As Jonathan Turley, professor at George Washington Law School, after reviewing both transcripts, Turley said, Bannon has 2 diametrically opposed sworn statements in a high-profile controversy with dozens of attorneys in attendance. This is what he told the New York Post. The transcripts indicates that my lawyers were aware of the inconsistencies, but in fact, this case was about whether I had lied under oath, which of course I hadn't, because to lie under oath, your misstatement has to be material, has to be willful, and it would have to be material. There was no Russian collusion. There was no WikiLeaks collaboration, but I was shocked to learn that Steve Bannon was contradicting his own testimony before the same body that I had testified. And only the New York Post covered this, and it got no other coverage. So, yeah, I have, don't try to split the movement, but I do think it is strange that his co-conspirators got long jail terms, but Steve Bannon was involved in the embezzlement of $15 million from a nonprofit, yet when he pled not guilty, he received no jail time at all. Deeply, deeply concerning and questionable. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to one of the advertisers and sponsors of this show, My Patriot Cigars. You find them at mypatriotcigars.com. I want to thank you, Alan, for your loyal advertising and sponsorship here on the Roger Stone Show. When we get back, we're going to talk about that Epstein connection, because I think many, many people would find that shocking. You're listening to the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We're talking to the right-wing cigar czar, the right-wing cigar king, Alan Jacoby from My Patriot Cigars, and we'll be right back.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an gestural implant, 68 milligrams radio pain. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
Summer's heating up, but the savings are cooling off. It's your last chance to shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day mega deals. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments, completely online with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. It's your last chance to shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day mega deals. Save up to 50% with minimum purchase, plus a free measure. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Once again, folks, before the end of the show, I'm going to reveal my mother's, that means my grandmother's, recipe for veal parmesan. So get your pen and paper ready. Before the end of the show, we're going to lay it out for you. In the meantime, we're talking to one of our valued advertisers here on the Roger Stone Show. Alan Jacoby is the founder of MyPatriotCigars.com. He's a man who knows a good cigar, and he has a pungent political point of view as well as a Trump loyalist. A lot of people don't realize, but the New York Post reported that after Jeffrey Epstein had pled guilty to sex crimes in Florida, that Steve Bannon visited him in his palatial New York residence, also visited his apartment in Paris. They co-produced a documentary which has never seen the light of day. I find this very odd, and then even stranger. Recently, at the Conservative Political Action Conference, out of nowhere, when they did a 2028 straw poll, J.D. Vance was understandably the first choice of most of the conference attendees, but then out of the blue, Steve Bannon is the second choice for president. Now, he has one distinction. He has now, for 4 years in a row, been on my international worst dressed list. The man is the progenitor of hobo chic. He looks to me like he chases down homeless people or dumpster dives for his wardrobe, and I don't understand his adversity to hot water and soap. It's a very, very strange thing. I mean, look, I'm a great believer in free speech, but I don't know the difference between, one major difference between he and I is that, well, I bathe. Alan, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, listen, the man, again, he's a con. And the whole Epstein connection, a lot of these people from Bannon's base, the War Room Posse, whatever they call themselves, they're all on social media screaming about the Epstein files. Maybe they should be screaming about their, I don't know, whatever they look at Steve Bannon as, and question him about his connection to Epstein. And that after the 2016 presidential election, after he was thrown out of the White House, why he was visiting with Epstein in New York, trying to rehabilitate this child rapist, because he was already a convicted pedophile by then, and he was literally trying to rehabilitate Jeffrey Epstein's public image to for media with CBS. He told Jeffrey Epstein to look directly into the camera now and then, don't share his racist theories on black people. Why was Steve Bannon coaching and consulting convicted child rapist and pedophile, registered sex offender at the time, Jeffrey Epstein? People need to start asking Steve Bannon that, why he was hanging around the Manhattan mansion. I'm sorry, but it's nobody wants to talk about it.
Look, I have to say I was very deeply disappointed that Steve Bannon betrayed me. I thought we had a decent relationship, but I believe the prosecutors knowingly suborned perjury by Steve Bannon. And I have no idea what deal he may have been trying to make for himself, for immunity or some non-prosecution. It's interesting that Jonathan Turley, the respected law professor at George Washington University, said that the comparisons to the Flynn prosecution in my case were striking. The investigators did not believe that Mike Flynn lied to the FBI. However, he was charged with false statements. A lawyer at the time for Steve Bannon said that his client misunderstood the question. I'm not sure how that's possible, because they asked him the exact same question. When he was asked before the House Intelligence Committee under oath whether he had ever discussed WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, or these allegedly stolen emails, he said, no, never. And when he was asked the exact same question on the stand at my trial, he not only did he say that I spoke to him in every conversation we had in 2016, but he said that he considered me the campaign's point man with WikiLeaks, which was news to me, since I never had any contact with WikiLeaks other than the very strange direct message on Twitter exchange, which is entirely innocuous, which I myself made public, and which took place 3 months before WikiLeaks, 3 months after WikiLeaks had already published their emails from the Clinton campaign and the DNC. So in other words, unless I had a time machine, involvement in that conspiracy would have been completely impossible. I don't know what game he's playing here, talking about Trump running for a third term. I would love to see more of the Trump presidency, but I don't see it's possible. All right, we've got to wrap this up. I want to thank our advertiser and my friend, Alan Jacoby at MyPatriotCigars.com for joining us today. Alan, thank you, and God bless you.
Roger, thank you. Take care.
All right, here we go. A little that's amore. All right. So here is the family recipe from my mother, who was Sicilian. You need 4 veal cutlets, about 1/4 inch thick, salt and pepper, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 large eggs, 1 cup of Italian-style breadcrumbs, 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, 2 cups of fine marinara sauce. You can get Michael's of Brooklyn is one that I like if you must go with a jarred sauce. A cup and a half of shredded mozzarella and some olive oil. Get the type that is for frying and sauteing. You can find it at D'Agostino's, or you can find it at any fine supermarket. Now, to prep the cutlets, you pat the veal dry, you season it with salt and pepper, then you dredge each cutlet in the flour, then you dip in beaten eggs, and then you coat with a mix of the breadcrumbs and the Parmesan cheese. Now you carefully pan fry them so they are golden brown, but only about at a medium to medium-high heat. You fry each cutlet about 2 to 3 minutes per side until they are golden brown. Now drain them on paper towels, and you begin the assembly. You preheated your oven to 375 degrees. You place the cutlets in a baking dish. You spoon the marinara, over each cutlet, and you top with mozzarella. You do it in layers. Now you bake. You bake uncovered for about 15 to 20 minutes until the cheese is melted and bubbly. Now remove it, let it sit for a little bit, garnish it with basil or parsley if desired, served with pasta or a side salad. This will be the greatest veal parmesan you've ever had in your life. Marron, go try the recipe. Until next Sunday when we meet again, to our listeners out there to the Roger Stone Show, God bless you and Godspeed.